Welcome back to the Next Level Shift. This is where we have real conversations for first responders who want to lead better, think sharper, and live with intention on and off the job. Today, we're talking about leadership, not rank, not title, real leadership. And I've got someone with me who brings a unique perspective, years in both the fire service and in law enforcement. That dual experience shapes how you see service, accountability, and culture. Brother, I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Today's guest has spent approximately 15 years in the fire service and 15 years in law enforcement. His experience across both professions has shaped the leadership philosophy grounded in responsibility and daily example, not just position. He's currently pursuing a criminal justice degree in law with hopes of stepping into the legal field one day. Faith and family are fundamental to how he leads, and he believes leadership starts with how you live day to day, being a role model for the people placed in your path. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming to hang out with me today.
Yeah, anytime, anytime. Not a lot of free time, of course, with two jobs, but full time
Yeah,
family. But yeah,
I know how it is.
yeah,
Trust and believe, trust and believe. All right, so we're gonna start off with some questions, and then we'll kind of have some space to just talk, person to person, like we often do.
sure.
Um, when you hear the word leadership, what does it actually mean to you? And it doesn't have to be anything, too crazy specific or anything like
hmm
that, but just, the floor is open.
The first thing that comes to my mind is just the ability to generate the word that I'm going to say is followership, right? Generate people that will follow, right? Doesn't mean that they follow you because you're in a uniform or because your status or how people perceive you outside. They follow you because they want to.
Okay.
And it's your ability to, just your ability to be able to bring those people in.
Okay. Okay. Did that definition kind of change over time? Did it just come to you just because, or?
Well, it is sort of changed. You and I talk a lot about the differences because of our unique training, right? Our unique
Right.
training, both on both police, EMS, and fire. Um, and my wife says something that's really great all the time. She says, I believe you being a firefighter first has made you a better and more compassionate police officer.
Okay. Yeah.
And I truly believe that, right? So the different things that we see out when we're, you know, you know, doing our law enforcement duties, we might have a little bit more understanding of what is going on, and have a little bit more compassion just because our fire job, and the services of fire, we basically are here to help. There's no wrong. We're not going to do anybody per se. They might say wrong. We're not going to do them wrong, right? Fire services,
Right.
we're there to help people.
Right.
In the police service, you might have to make decisions that someone might say you're doing me wrong, right? Even when we know we're walking that line of what the law is telling us we have to do,
Right.
or what somebody should not be doing. Um, Fire services, we don't take someone's freedom from them.
Right.
Police, you have the right to do that under certain situations. So I think as a firefighter first, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you feel the same, say it. But I think it's just changed me a little bit with I can have a little more compassion. People have days. If it's
Right.
something that I can work around with discretion, then let's do that, right? Let's make it work. But yeah, it's basically come to me over years.
Right.
It's really
Okay.
taken a lot of time to say, all right, I don't have to, because there was a time, my first 4 years of policing, I had to tell myself I can't be the nice guy all the time, right? But you
Right.
still can put that into place,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, just many years of that and just really thinking it over and seeing different styles throughout the years, the old school way, the new school way, and we've talked about that before,
Yeah.
and just people wanting to integrating them together and not understanding the portion of just really integrating them together. It's
Right.
one or the other. And today I
Yeah.
feel like this, and tomorrow I feel like that. So yeah,
Okay. Okay. So that kind of, the years of experience and going through different trials and tribulations with the experience and the training that we have kind of shaped that perspective, when it
Mhm.
comes to leadership. Wouldn't you agree to an extent, because
Yeah.
it does happen often that, you get on a call and these folks, usually the typical police officer that only has, kind of a one-sided track mind, they tend to overreact a little bit. We get there and it's like, just calm down. It's not that,
Hmm.
not that serious. Everything's gonna
Right.
be okay.
Right. Mhm.
Oh, just drop
Take it
that, huh?
easy, right?
I know. So what's a leadership lesson you've learned the hard way?
Um,
Because we've all been in situations. I've been in, where people had, not to curse, but kind of fudged me over. There we
hmm
go. Proper
hmm
way to put it. Trying to do the right thing, and then it turns
hmm
out they're not doing the right thing, and it ends up biting me in the butt.
hmm You know, I think sometimes I like to say that I like to put trust in people and that we're all doing the same job and we should know the job, right?
Right.
But a perfect example um, is just the newer people in public safety, the new what everyone calls rookies, right?
Okay.
When they come, we expect them to as simple as to know how to de-escalate, as simple as they should know how to crank a chainsaw. And we instead of showing them,
Right.
we drive it home and we make fun of, and instead of really getting out there, we eventually end up showing them because we have to.
Right.
Um, but just looking at it now in my older age, I feel like there's more of a there should be more of a polite way of doing it. Hey bud, or hey, come here. Let's just learn it.
Right.
Let's learn it. And it's unfortunate. I'm a Gen Xer, and I don't know where you fall, if you fall in Gen X or millennial, and whatever the new is now. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
Gen Z or something like that.
Gen
Yeah, I'm
Z.
millennial.
A lot of people they've never touched a chainsaw. They've never touched a weed
Right.
eater. They've never touched
Right.
a lawnmower. And
That's
I've
crazy.
been where I've cut the yard as a senior guy at a fire station, and the lieutenant or captain is like, hey, let the rook do it. So I'd come off the lawnmower and say, hey, you got everything? You're good with this, and they're like, yeah, I know how, and they made it pass through the entire yard without putting the blaze down.
Right.
It's just simple stuff like that. Instead of just putting all of your eggs in one basket and saying, okay, they know, maybe just walk them through it. Say, hey, let's take this time just to learn it real quick. And I know you say you do, but it can bite you. If they don't know how to crank a chainsaw, and if you were to have staffing issues,
Yeah.
and you're on
Yeah.
a truck, and they throw someone that's been on 6 months, a year, and has never cranked a chainsaw, and you get a topside vent job.
Right.
We're all for letting the person that's never cut a hole first, right?
Right.
But we definitely don't want you holding us up for it.
Right.
So just taking that extra time and saying, okay, we know no one knows everything. Uh, so
Okay.
when we talk about leadership, and I think the question that you're asking is, when has it really bit me in the what? But and I'm just I'm not in the rank of leadership. You are. I'm not, and I'm okay with that right now. Right.
Right.
I'm comfortable. Um, when I talk about comfortability, I don't mean just at the fire station level, at the police department level. I'm comfortable with my family, my wife. Everything around me feels
Right.
good.
Right.
You have your ups and downs with things, but when it comes to really having to be 24 hours, and I think in some cases 48 hours, like your shift is sometimes, right?
Right.
Which I would think that would even be harder for me. And I think, again, we've talked about that too. I think I could get used to it. I think it would be great for my family if the shifts were a little different. It would just take me some time. You know, in years past, I had an officer above me, and there was something off. He just didn't like me. I didn't
Right.
have to say a whole lot. He just didn't like me. And you know, there was a lot of the round talk we say, making fun and this and that, and and again, in my older age, I'm not really there anymore. I just want to do right by people. So it's guys, we're off and sends a message, and I say something, and me and another firefighter's going back and forth because we have a relationship like that, and I get a side text, you know, I'm not going to let you treat the guys like this. And I'm like, ooh, where did that come from? Well,
Right.
I'm not really the type that's going to go back and forth through text. So I made the phone call and I said, where's this coming from?
Right.
And he went off on me and said, I'll talk to you when I get back. And I said, are you going to talk to me or at me? Because
Right.
what you normally do is talk at me.
Right.
We got back, a couple shifts passed. He didn't want to handle the situation. So finally, I was like, a couple shifts in, I'm like, hey, man, we need to do this. And the whole pointing fingers in face, stuff like that, I won't do anybody like that.
Right.
And it just backfires because, and it's a sad thing when you want to really trust in the leader that you have based
Right.
on rank, and you just can't, you just can't because the other firefighters are, I'm the senior firefighter at this time, are saying, hey, we just crack jokes with him and say whatever and go along with the flow because we just want to appease him.
Right.
We just want to make the day go by as easy as it can because we know if we say something wrong, you know, that to me is not a leader. Now, those leaders can always recognize and change. Um, and we got a lot of good leaders out there. Unfortunately, that was one that bit me. And he tried to get me transferred and this and that, which was fine. I mean, I'm
Right.
going to go where I'm told. Um, but those are the things you deal with, and those are the hard things you have to deal with as a leader. I
Right.
think. I think you have to make decisions, and you have to say, okay, because I had a captain at the same station. He's awesome. He's now a chief, but he looked me in the face and he said, I want the guy that's going to question and have solutions, and sometimes is a pain in my tail.
Right.
But when we get on the job, it gets done. I don't
Right.
have to ask questions. I don't have to bark orders. The job gets done. And he was right. You gotta find a way as a leader to have those ones that are gonna follow you and will follow you anywhere you go because they know it's gonna be a good decision.
Okay. Okay. Um, is there anything that you would do differently now after going through those, hard times and humbling situations?
Um, the one thing I probably would do, which I did for the longest time, and with older age, I'm a little more outspoken or more. I'll speak out loud a little bit more.
Okay.
I do catch myself at times just pausing before and saying, is it worth bringing that up? Is it worth going down that rabbit hole? And if it's not, I don't bring it up. I'm just not going to. It first, starts with respect, and I wouldn't change how I've done it because it was a learning thing. I was
Right.
able to learn from it. Um, yeah, so I don't know that I would change it.
Okay. Okay. Like I said, I feel like everything happens for a reason.
Yeah,
You know, um, I have I have had my share of leadership woes myself.
mm,
Because obviously I preach about leadership all the time in my other podcasts and whatnot. But
hmm,
I went from having an all young crew to having an older crew and on their
yeah,
way out,
yeah,
and it kind of humbled me going between both. Um, because you got the younger crew don't know what they're doing, but they feel like they know it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just sat there, just listened and observed, and then would do things after. Typical. Hey, you're young, dumb, feel like you know everything, which is
Mm-hmm.
fine. I'll let you have that for a few moments until you get close to fucking up, and then it's my job to catch you and bring you back up to
Mm-hmm.
standard and keep you going and make sure that you're safe. But that's really the most humbling moment is dealing with these firefighters on their way out in
Mm-hmm.
regards to retirement and how
Mm-hmm.
they handle themselves. Which is it's again, I always preach about bringing the new with the old, and them being set in their ways after you know years and years and years of experience.
Right.
Both of all three of them are 20 years plus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they always like, oh, we did it this way, we did it this way, we did it this way, until we go
Mm-hmm.
on a call and it's like, no, we do it this way, and it's hard to sometimes bypass that experience, and they feel
Mm-hmm.
like, again, like I preached in one of my episodes, is they feel like experience automatically gives you leadership values.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a constant back and forth every shift, just trying to get them to understand that, hey, that's not the right way to go about these things anymore. And they're slowly adjusting to it, but
Mm-hmm.
you know
When you talk about leadership, what are your thoughts on leadership? Like, what makes you the leader that you are in the fire station, and what makes someone else a better leader or a worse leader? You know.
um I just think the leadership comes. You can see the people that are leaders, not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
the person that you go to a class and they're the one speaking. Because
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, we go to classes and things like that. We feel as a person that that person is really knowledgeable and they're like a natural leader because hey,
Mm-hmm.
they're coming to this class and teaching us things that they know, so
Mm-hmm.
they gotta be a great leader.
Yeah.
And then you have a couple days with this person and take the class, and you're like, man, this person, they know what they're talking about, but they ain't
Mm-hmm.
they ain't the best leader. And that goes
Right.
hand in hand with what I was saying about, again, the experience with experience doesn't always equal
Mm-hmm.
leadership values and leadership
Mm-hmm.
skills. Um, so that's my take on it. Like I said, I've met some great firefighters over the years, and some are great leaders, and some are great firefighters. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to take that away from them. But you see how some of them, rank all the way up to chief, battalion chief, and stuff, and then some just stay a driver the whole
Right.
time. They're great
Mm-hmm.
firefighters, great
Mm-hmm.
experience, but they might be good leaders on the battlefield, but
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to doing paperwork and being,
Right.
a public servant, it's a whole nother ballgame,
I always think
especially
of
at 2
something.
o'clock in the morning for those med jobs.
Yeah, I always think one thing every morning when I get up to go to work is like, what makes a good leader, right? We talk about that and we say that's what we're talking about now. But like, to me, the truly great leader, can communicate the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Right,
And it just sticks with me. Like, how's this communication today? What
right,
can I do, even if I'm not the boss? What can I do to what is one thing that I can do that people understand that I'm here if they need me. And I'm old school, and I've said this to my, you know, other drivers and firefighters that want to learn the truck and stuff like that. So, I will train with you and I will teach you anything you want. I will not come to you and ask you to do it, though.
right,
Right. If you want it, you come ask for it. And that's just the old school mentality that we've always had, right?
right,
Back when I was, you know, coming back and, coming up and, my first year at the fire station, 2011, I was like, hey, Sarge, what can you show me today? Or just not even that, just walking behind the sergeant when they're checking off their apparatus, pulling every door to see what's in it, to learn everything so that when we're on the fire grounds, I'm not pulling doors to look for a certain tool or piece
right,
of equipment. So, and I say that I just think every morning, like, how can I make someone understand, I can relay the good, bad, and the ugly. just through whatever they need.
Perfect. That kind of ties into the next question I had. What was the difference between rank and real leadership? We
Hmm.
kind of jumped into it, which is fine.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen someone with rank but no influence? And that kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying about, you know,
I can't I can't say no influence, right? Because I think that there's always someone out there for someone that influences them.
okay,
It may not be my influence, but I
okay,
think there's someone out, even in a leader role, they might be able to influence somebody, right?
right,
What I can say is there's a system in place and it's fair. And unfortunately, if you're not good at what that system asks, you're not going to get promoted, and that's okay. You'll find a way later if that's what you want to do.
and that
Um,
ties into the next question I kind of had with that
mhm.
was, have you seen someone with no rank but has major influence?
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
Hmm. And there's many of those out there, right?
right,
Um, you know, when I look at the police department, my first he actually lives in my neighborhood up here. Not in my neighborhood, but close by, and he's local to where I live.
right,
And I started with the sheriff's office, and I was able to befriend the warrants guys, and I was able to do warrants for a few years. And he was awesome. He knew his stuff. The one guy I was riding with, he knew his stuff.
right,
You know, he was never going to get promoted though because they didn't care for him, but they knew that was the spot for him.
right.
And he was able to lead people and make good decisions. And I went with him everywhere we had to go. If we were you know, going in to get a bad guy, guns blazing, I went in with him because I trusted him.
Right.
And he had no rank, and he'd been there like 20 years.
Right.
So yeah, they are there. They are real, and you just got to find them.
Okay. 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 What's I gonna say? I lost train of thought. Um, have you seen someone with no rank but major influence? I feel like when I did read this question earlier that you had stated about there is somebody for that specific
Mm-hmm.
person, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
in rank. And my thing is once, and this is just my thoughts. When you do become that lieutenant, that captain,
Mm-hmm.
even that sergeant, kind of your job, which is I feel like isn't brought up as often when you are testing out or applying for these positions, is that you do kind of owe it to your fellow firefighter, officer, EMT,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, whatnot in public safety, the the effort to at least influence them and be adjustable and adaptable to gain some kind of influence towards those people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's not going to be the perfect fit for you as a supervisor or a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even as a non-ranking leader, same thing. I feel like you owe it to the job to at least adapt and see where they're coming from before you
Mm-hmm.
just being a hole to them the whole
Right.
entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's also a good leadership value that some ranking and non-ranking people can bring to the table to kind of change the culture and the responsibility throughout. If that makes sense, does that make sense? Kind of. You feel that way. You feel like you become a lieutenant, and hey, you know what?
I
This
think
station ain't
that
for me.
I
I
think
don't
that
like it.
there should be a playbook, right? Maybe a
Yeah,
playbook at your department, right? The
yeah,
thing is I truly believe and I feel for the lieutenants and captains because I understand their job changes, right? You're no longer the best friend to the ones that you're best friends with in the fire station. You just can't be. Um, you have to have an understanding with your crew as a lieutenant and a captain that I'm here for you, but there are times where I'm gonna have to come down on things. especially when they're not done correctly, especially when it could get someone hurt.
Right.
I think that we could possibly do a better job as leaders to understand. Sometimes you have to remove yourself from maybe what you used to do as a firefighter or a sergeant. I think we could do a better job of that. And I'm not saying it's wrong now, and I'm not saying take the fun out of it. I'm just saying understand you can never take back a situation or something that you said during a situation or during a just hangout session, and then come back and lay down the law with something similar that happened, right? Because someone that came and filled in has hurt feelings now, or something was done that shouldn't have been done. But like last week, we were sitting doing the same thing, and now we're here, right? So I think that sometimes we got to do a better job of recognizing, okay, I have to remove myself from this situation. I have to walk away from it. It doesn't have to be evident, right? Just
Right.
you know. But I think I see that more. I think we don't really do the job like we used to as the old heads used to. I just remember the old heads just getting up and walking out.
Right.
Like I'm out.
Right.
And no hard feelings. They just don't want to be involved in something right like that, right? But there was never a time that they could come back and have to file a complaint on somebody,
Right.
and anyone can say, well, just
Right.
last year there was this, it's just never used to happen.
Right. Okay. 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 So next segment we're gonna be doing is decision making under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You've worked fire and law enforcement. Decisions matter.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're life altering.
Mm-hmm.
So how do leaders make sound decisions under pressure? And this
Yeah.
this is coming for you. So this
Mm-hmm.
is you know, especially the recent situations you've had at the different jobs you work at.
Mm-hmm.
How do you
I think that so I've got a great captain now, and I've had many great captains, and great lieutenants, which we have at our station. Um, the difference is at the police department, I make those decisions, right? Like
right,
if I'm on a scene and something happens and I've got to make a split second decision, I make that, right? And there's no, if it's just me, it's just me
hmm,
on those calls. Fire, you always have someone with you, right? So
right,
you always hope that your leader, captain or lieutenant, makes the right decision, right? And
right,
and I know that the lieutenants and captains hope that their crew will follow, and do what they ask them to. Um, but I also think there's a lot to be said with having a crew that a captain or a lieutenant doesn't have to say anything to, and the job gets done.
oh yeah, yeah,
I think that the problem we're having with leadership these days, and I'm just going to be quite frank about this, right? And the only thing I can take it back is just to scenes, right?
right,
Um, Officers need to do a better job of finding what their crew strengths are
hmm,
and weaknesses,
yes,
and
yes,
saying, okay, this person has a lot. They're strong in this area, right? Which I can delegate this to, right? And
right,
I always want to say to my officers, like, let me help you. You have a lot. I mean, I've driven, chief around for a few years and the battalion chiefs and stuff like that, and I understand the duties these guys have. But these people, people think that chiefs just sit in the house and go to the calls. There's
right,
a lot more to it.
right,
There's a lot more to it, and they have a lot going on. And at the station level, as a lieutenant and a captain, I think that we could do a better job in saying, hey, if you don't mind, I'm going to delegate this to you because I see that you're strong in this area and you can do this, right?
right,
And these are things that I trust that you can do. And also saying, okay, I can see weaknesses in that person, right? So let's give it to someone else.
right,
But we don't do it. We don't do a good job of of using our resources being our people.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So how do you stay grounded, with all this going on, with these scenes and different jobs and
Mhm.
family, friends?
When it comes to my jobs, you know, I'll leave it at work. When I come home, I'm at home. I'm 100% focused on my wife and my kids and doing for them. Um, it doesn't always seem like you're always going to get that you know that feeling of they appreciate it, right?
Right.
We just do it, right? We know we want to take care of our wife, we want to take care of our kids, with or without the appreciation, right? We still do it. Um, you um, the job's the job, and if you can't get past that, then it's just not for you, right? If you have to take that home and you're going home and you're having bad dreams about it, or you're having to talk about that all the time to um, your spouse or whoever it is, it just may not be a fit, right?
Right.
Because those are things that you take on, and that will haunt you. Um, so I just know this is what I signed up for, and this is what I've wanted to do. Right? I didn't grow up as a kid saying I want to be a firefighter. I want to be a police officer. I went to, school, got my associate's degree during the time. I went to a corporate job. I did that for many years, and then I said I can't do this anymore. I can't do a corporate job where someone's going to point in my face, scream at me, and there's no reward behind it. So
Right.
I went and took a job making half of what I was making at the time, and I've loved it ever since.
That's
And
good.
it took me some time to, of course we all, I think I've talked about the trigger pull dream, right?
Right.
When I came through the fire department, I said, I was having dreams about, being on the line and the water not coming out, right? No
Right.
water coming out of that thing.
Right.
And I thought it was just a thing, and then go to the police department. In a couple of years, I have dreams about trigger pull. I'm in the
Right.
middle of a shootout and I can't physically cannot pull the trigger,
Right.
so you eventually find ways to cope, right? And I think
Right.
a big thing, if you don't mind me saying, is your whole thing is drinking, right? I think
Right.
it's really coming out and it's really hitting hard for public safety.
Right.
People are not drinking like they used to.
Right.
When you find ways to cope, and that was one of the ways to cope back in the day, right? You go
Yep.
home, you get off, you drink.
Right.
And I think what's happening now is we're finding different ways.
Right.
But just understanding that you can't take it home with you.
Right. Okay. Okay. How do faith and personal discipline influence these decisions? Just trying to hit on a little bit of faith. I'm trying to
Yeah.
over it, but
No, that's a good question. So every morning I get up, I say a quick prayer. All right. And the people that are around me when I get up in the morning time, I usually get up around, unless I'm here at the house, because I sleep really good at the house. Just something about being home and being comfortable, right? In a
hmm
fire station, I'm usually up by 5:20. First thing I do is say a little prayer. And I'm not going to go into detail what I say, but it's to benefit my family.
right.
You know, um, it's sort of hard to talk about these things, just like one of my classes, my criminal justice law class. I can't really talk freely and openly. And even with religion, I don't want to, because I don't want people to see me and say, oh, you're that guy, right? I
Right.
believe in God. He's good. And if
Right.
you don't know him, you need to know him.
Right.
And you need to say your prayers and you need to have your ask. Um, and I tell people that freely and openly, right? And I
Right.
try not to go over it, because, you just don't want that one person that's not with it, right?
Right.
But we need to put it out there. So faith wise, I say a prayer for my safety and my family's safety every morning, because you never know when you get up and you go to the fire station, or if you get up and you get in your patrol car, if you're coming home that night.
Right.
So faith for me is one of the biggest things that I need, right?
Right.
Things aren't always going to go right. You might have an argument with your spouse. Your kids may be driving you crazy. Um, but if you don't have faith, you need to. You need to.
Okay. So how does leadership look different at home compared to on the job? And that, that's that's a big topic, because the
It
leadership at
is.
home is a lot different than the leadership at work.
It is.
You know,
Um, I've got a wonderful wife, but she's the boss lady, right?
right,
She is. She's the boss at work, and she tries to be the boss at home, and that's okay. Um, me as a man, I want peace in the home, right? I want to come home, I want to have peace. I want to do what's right. We want to take as men, we want, or as me. I mean, I'll just speak for me. I just want to make sure everybody's okay, right? Um, I want to make sure feelings are good. I want to make sure they feel respected. They come home to a warm home and they feel good about it.
right,
And we have differences, and we're going to have differences with our spouses, and we're going to have arguments about kids,
right,
arguments about money. Um, and I think the whole leadership goal is there's in a marriage, everyone wants to be the leader.
right,
The difference is are you willing to give some away?
right.
Um, and I'm trying not to say too much because I don't want to get in trouble if my wife sees this, right? But it's harder for me to communicate it to her than
Right,
it is to say it out loud, right?
right,
The thing is when you're the leadership part at home, no one wants to be wrong, no one
right,
wants to be called out. Um, but the common denominator is everyone has the same goal. Both parties have the same goal.
right,
It's just not said enough, right? Like
right,
you just should just probably just say, um, I think I hear what you're saying, and I think that we both want the same thing,
right,
and I think we don't say that enough. I think that we just start talking over each other, and we get upset and feel like we're not being heard. So the leadership part, it's. I think the leadership part is more difficult at home than it is at work, right?
right,
Because again, both husband and wife want to be the leader.
right. Okay, okay. And this is kind of a funny one. What happens when someone leads well at work but not at home?
Falls apart, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Falls apart, man. Like that's probably
Sometimes take it
and
out on you at work because they can't control or not control, but not
correct.
necessarily have a nice balance at home
You
and
know
work.
what's funny though, and I don't know if you can speak for this, but like after so many years, I think I've recognized it. You can tell when someone's upset with their spouse.
Right,
You can tell when they, um, I mean, without getting into it, might be having some money issues.
right,
You can tell that when I say money issues, like I don't know where I'm going to come up with this transmission fix. My car broke down the other day. Now I'm going to have to work extra jobs. The problem is when you're working extra, it's good and all at one time. But if you have a spouse at home, you've got to say, this is our main goal,
right,
right? And this is when I want to stop doing this overtime, right? Because our main goal right now is to pay for the broke transmission.
right,
It's going to take me this, X amount of shifts to work extra. Can we do that?
right,
They start seeing the extra money and they like it and they love it. And now they're not home enough and things aren't going well at home, the home front. And, I've seen it tear people down. I've
right.
seen it tear families down. Um, but I've also seen it tear crews apart, right?
Yeah,
If they're having a hard time at home and they don't want to be home, they come to the station, they're there all the time, and they're you got to do this and you got to do that, and let's just talk about it, man. Holidays, right? What do we say holidays are?
I refuse to answer that question.
Yeah, right. Don't right. Don't. Yeah, we don't want to do that. But just taking a minute to say, hey guys, what do y'all want to do today?
Right,
And then it'll fall apart. If you're falling apart at home, you'll never do that.
right, right, right. Okay, okay. So our next segment, we're talking about culture.
Okay.
I'm not saying this culture, public safety can either build you or break you. How you feel about that? I mean, like, I guess another good is like, how much does influence actually, from a single person have on the culture? So, like,
I think it has a
um,
lot. I think
okay,
what I'm looking at now is like everyone wants to fit in and be part of something. Back in the day, you could point out that one as like, man, that's a dang good firefighter right there,
right,
or that's a and now it's like, oh, such and such doesn't conform with our ideas, and you know they're this and they're that, and it wasn't like that back in the day. It was more like, man, that was a great firefighter.
right,
You know, um, so I don't know. I don't know how to answer that politically correct, right?
okay. I got a couple questions for that afterwards. So,
Mm-hmm.
what's one cultural shift you think our profession needs? Our professions need? Being
Cultural shift.
Yeah, I've been harping on out being alcohol free this whole time. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I'm really passionate about is peer support and stuff like that. So that would be
I
my
think that needs to happen, but every time we open up something like that, at a department level, it just falls to the wayside, right? We don't. I think what needs to really be honed in on is mental health, which falls into the whole thing, right? It'll help people with their home lives. It'll help people with their careers. It will help people with their everyday thought process, right? Because the
right,
easiest thing we can do every day is beat ourselves down. That's
right. Oh,
easy.
yeah, it's free. It's free.
Yeah, yeah. And you let that stay in your mind, it will get you, man.
Right.
I'll say that from experience. You will, if you start to think something, it can come true,
Consume you.
right?
Consume you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, mental health, man.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Another thing is I think we need to be what falls into that too is just is physical health.
Okay. Okay. I second that. Especially,
Yeah,
a lot of departments don't work out. Well,
right.
they put on paper they work out, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
my crew, they jazzercise and do a little
Yeah,
tai chi
yeah.
throughout the
And
day.
I'm not great about it all the time, but I'm where I want to be, physically strong where I want to be. I'm not the biggest, but I'm where I want to be.
Right,
And I could do
right,
more, during shifts, and you know, need to find time. But I'm trying to find my time together with two jobs, full time family, full time
right,
school. You
right.
know, So I think mental and physical health would probably be the number one thing that could go together, and we could work on more as departments.
Cool, cool, cool.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell younger responders about navigating culture? And that's between, yeah, both jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I would just say find your way. Um, I've made some really good friends through my career, all the way from just someone that's starting out, all the way up to white shirts or five stars.
right,
And when I say that, is people will be like, "Oh, I don't like such and such. I don't this and that, and they're this." And when I meet them, I make my own assumption. Now, my assumption is the same as the last guy. Perfect. But I can tell you this much: I've shooken hands with people that said, this guy is, he's sorry, and I'm like, man, that's a damn good guy, or that's a damn good, you know, she's a great battalion chief. Just
right,
just we sometimes don't find our own way, and we listen
right.
and absorb that instead of saying, okay, I'm going to make my own assumption. So I
Okay,
think that could help.
okay. All right, cool. So you're back in school working towards your criminal justice law.
Mhm.
What drives you to keep going, keep growing?
It's personal, and I'm not going to get into that. And I've shared it with you before. It became personal to me. Sitting in criminal law, you know, sitting in family law, it's just become personal. I won't
I'm
say
I'm
left or
trying to
right.
figure out, what. Pretty much just asking, what advice would you give someone that feels like they're stuck? You know, because you've been in the game long enough. You're like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna all of a sudden go to law school or go to school in general.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most people that I've met, I'm sure you've met as well. They 15 years in, they're like, hey, we're gonna ride this train till till the end,
To
and
the
just
very end. And I thought I was there.
right,
The best advice I can give somebody is I thought I was there, right? Right now, I say I'm comfortable being where I'm at in the position I'm in, right? But wait till 4 years from now, I might say, okay, it's time for me to get promoted. You
right,
know, and I say that because so many times out of the years, I took a long time. I was a firefighter for more than 10 years.
right,
You know, and I was okay with that. Now, other people talked about it,
right,
right? Because everyone had their opinion, but I was okay with it. And I said, I don't want to, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And now I say, um, and life experiences made me do this, right? I said, I'll never do this again. I'll
right,
never do this again, right? I did it again. And it was, it's just never listen to what you're telling yourself right now.
right,
Maybe write it down. And then 5 years from now, when your mind changes, go back through your book and say, okay, I did say that. And now I'm
right,
back here. And this is what I want to do now, moving forward, right? So just never tell yourself you're not going to do it. Never say never,
right.
right?
Okay, okay. Do you feel that And I preach this a lot too. Communication, continuing education, with leadership development is important. Do you feel that way, or do you feel like I mean,
I feel
I
it's
keep
important.
right
I
because
don't
I'm going
think
to these
that.
classes, and you got this older generation of firefighters and
Mhm,
stuff, and officers. Some of these classes I'm in, these are police majors and stuff like that are taking these
mhm,
classes with me, and they're developing and continuing their education later
mhm,
on their way out. So they have like 5 years before they're gone. They've already
mhm,
made decisions. They've already written SOPs
mhm,
and done a plethora of things that I don't think that the education that they're getting now is necessarily going to influence anything that happens in the next 5 years. Because again, they're thinking,
mhm,
"Hey, I'm on my way out. I done made it to major. I done made it to, deputy chief, all that other good stuff.
mhm.
Ain't no reason for me to shake the tree
What do we
now."
know about people that are getting education that late in the game and that are in those positions as deputy chief or chief? What do we know about them when they retire? We know that they usually go somewhere else and get a
Yeah.
chief spot somewhere, right? We know
Okay.
that's one of the things, right? I think that's the mindset behind it, right? What if I retire and I just go, I just doesn't right now, I'm not ready to retire. But some don't want to go from the rank that they were at to a lower rank, right? There's some that do and they're good at it. Um,
Right.
but get your education, right? I think you could vouch for this, right? Get my education. Because what if one day you do retire and you decide 6 months later, I just don't want to sit here. I don't
Right.
have enough travel in me.
Right.
Where can I go, right? But
Right.
a chief spot's open and you need education, you need knowledge and experience. Um, and if you don't have one of those three, right,
Right.
you sort of just kicked yourself out of the running, right? So I think
Right.
that's what it is, right?
Okay.
Um, you know, for me, it's different, right? I want to, when I retire, um, I want to retire and I just want to do maybe a couple cases a year,
Right.
nothing big. Um, but we talked about it a minute ago. Mine became personal, and that's why I'm going back to school. And again, I looked at myself and I said, "This is another thing I said I'd never do again." You know?
Okay. All right. So now we're on the part of the podcast where we have rapid fire. So these are just questions, just maybe one sentence, two sentence
Mm-hmm.
answers. Nothing too crazy. Just, just something light. What's one trait every leader must have? Must have.
Likability,
Likability. Okay.
so you got to be able to be able to like and want to be around that
Okay.
person to be able to follow.
Okay. What's one leadership myth that you can remember off the top of your head?
That every leader is a good leader.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Any books or any kind of resource that, shaped you?
Yes. Step up and lead. It's more along the lines for firefighters. It was a great leadership book. Um, Jocko Willink's book. It was a good one. What was that one called? Extreme Ownership. It was a
Okay.
good one. But the one I enjoyed the most was Step Up and Lead.
Okay. Okay.
It really gave you a lot of aspects of departments and how they do things and how people have taken from other people and used them. It was a good book and it's helped me through.
Cool. All right. What does integrity mean in one sentence?
Doing the right thing when you know it's right.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
It may not be what the normal is and what other people think, but you know it's right and you're
Right.
going to do the right thing.
Okay. And this is the last one I got for you. I want you to finish this sentence for me. Leadership fails
When there's no accountability at the upper level.
That's good. That's good. Solid. That's a good one. I like that. I like that. All right. Before we wrap up, what's one leadership principle you hope listeners take away from this conversation?
Um, if you were to get in the position where you wanted to test for rank and you did get rank, um, I hope that you can mold people and show them the way and show them the right way. Understand that you're going to make decisions that may not be liked. You're also going to make decisions that are going to benefit. Um, and make sure you have the communication skills that are going to allow you to get what you're trying to say across. Good, bad, or ugly.
Okay. Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. Leadership isn't about being perfect, it's about being intentional. And like we
Mm-hmm.
talked about today, it starts with how you live daily. If this conversation helped you, share it with someone in your department who needs to hear it. This is the Next Level Shift. We'll see you next time.